Hello, welcome. Marlene here. In the hopes of spicing up our YouTube channels, Daniela and I decided to do some cookie decorating challenges. For the first challenge, we did a shape challenge. That's where you use a cookie shape and you try to redesign it, reinvent it, not do what it was intended. So this was a rabbit head, and this is what we actually came up with. Han did a unicorn, and I did a daisy with a butterfly sitting on it. You guys voted and Han took it. She won with her beautiful unicorn cookie. For those of you that are interested, today's video is a tutorial on how I created my design. Before moving on with today's tutorial, I wanted to mention that we have already filmed the second edition of our Smackdown. This time it was a color challenge, and I'm looking to knock Daniela's crown off her head and take a win. So if you guys haven't watched that video yet, check out the description box. And now on to today's step-by-step tutorial. You'll find the template for this design on my Patreon account. I cut it out, laid it on the cookie, and airbrushed it. This gave me very quickly the outer perimeter guidelines, and the blue suited the design. I'm using some electric green for the stem on the flower, which I'm piping. This is kind of in the background. Very little of it will be visible on the finished cookie. I wanted the flower to look like it was in the foreground, the butterfly in the background. And so now I'm adding kind of a base to the flower. This is the icing that is the same thickness as the butterfly, but not visible in the final kind of finished cookie. So I'm just flooding the flower area. I had airbrushed the template onto the cookie just so I knew where to put that base icing for the flower. I'm outlining the whole thing, not really worrying about each individual petal. I'm going to be doing that after. Now I'm working on the butterfly in a technique called wet on wet, which is exactly how it sounds. It's wet icing that you're playing with. And so obviously you need to work quickly. Royal icing does crust surprisingly fast. Not all designs can be broken up, but the butterfly wing allows this to be split up in manageable sections so that you're not as stressed. So I'm doing the black outline, or in this case kind of a charcoal gray, and coming in with my teal, purple, and white, and creating some stripes going vertically, which I will be dragging with my needle across. And you can see the design come to life as you run your needle through the wet icing. So I'm doing alternate sections of teal and purple, and then I'm separating each section with some white icing, and I'm grabbing my needle tool and just pulling through the icing. It's important to wipe the needle in between drags so that you don't get black in your teal, white, and violet. Just kind of mucks it up. And once you're done doing that, you can come in and add your polka dots. If you add your polka dots before dragging, you'll warp the shape of those dots. Once you've completed the design, you can't go back to it. The icing starts drying shockingly fast, and if you stick your needle in it, you will damage the surface. When working in wet on wet icing, it's crucial that your icing is all the same consistency. If you drop in a runnier icing in a thicker icing, you're going to get a dent. The icing will be concaved. And now I'm moving on to the second section, trying to replicate what I did on the first wing as closely as I can, but obviously this is handmade. It doesn't matter if it's not exactly the same. And let's say you mess it up, you can use your spatula and scrape off the icing. You don't have to wait for the top sections to be dry to move on to the bottom of the butterfly. It's just about being able to drag without kind of damaging the surface. That's why I'm breaking it up in sections. So I'm flooding that first bottom section and then making sure that it's nice and level and adding my little dots to the bottom. A butterfly design is a great way to experiment with this technique and how it works. You just play around with it to see if you pull the dots, just half of it, as you'll see, you create like a tear shape, pull towards the body, and you get a kind of, realish looking butterfly. The flower at the bottom does make this a little bit trickier than normal. If you're a beginner, I suggest you just make a butterfly, forget about the flower, just to facilitate creating the dots and the sections. And just like before, we're replicating the first wing on the other side. Try to get, the same thing as closely as you can on both sides. You'll need to wait for the icing to dry for the next step. I piped out the head and the body. You could leave it like that, but I like to add sanding sugar. I find that it really adds another level of dimension to the little character. It's very, very important to pour that sanding sugar on dry icing with regards to the wings. The body has to be wet to stick the sanding sugar, but the wings, if they're wet, you're going to end up with sanding sugar all over the wings and just mess up the whole design. If you look at the flower there, I had airbrushed my guidelines on the surface, and now I let the body dry a little bit. I'm working in yellow icing, flooding the center of the flower and coating that in some yellow nonpareil sprinkles. I thought that kind of replicated pollen. And now I'm outlining and flooding alternate sections of the daisy to create definition in between each petal. If I just flood that whole area, well, I'm going to lose that separation in between petals. And so you outline and flood in the same consistency, and you'll see it kind of creates the look of a real flower. Finalizing the butterfly with a few lines, the antenna and the little legs kind of standing in the daisy. As you can see, the design fills up the rabbit very well. You almost can't make out that it's a rabbit anymore. Here are the completed cookies. Once again, if you want to watch Han's tutorial for the winning design, you'll find that link in the description box. Be sure to subscribe to our channels and turn your notifications on so you don't miss any future challenges. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.